What's up, Taiwan? I'm Louise with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Taiwan's military says 39 Chinese warplanes have been spotted flying near the country in the past 24 hours. China regularly sends military planes into Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. This is not the country's territory, but it's used for defensive purposes. Of the 39, 20 warplanes entered the zone, including a dozen fighter jets and 3 drones. This comes after a US-guided missile destroyer and a Canadian warship sailed through the Taiwan Strait on Wednesday. Taiwan's military says it activated missile defense systems and is monitoring the situation. Taiwan's largest international space conference is wrapping up with a focus on satellite technology. As Jaime Ocon now reports, it's part of a push by Taiwan to become more digitally resilient.
Staying connected. This is the motivation behind Taiwan's first ever international space conference, which brings together companies and analysts from around the world. And the focus here is on satellite technology.
Satellites, they help every aspect of modern life. So we live in a digital world, and whatever you care about, whether you care about your position, knowing where you are on a map, or you want to connect seamlessly everywhere, satellites are the way to do it.
This conference, hosted by Taiwan's space agency, is part of the country's push to become digitally resilient. Threatened by neighboring China, which sees Taiwan as part of its territory and surrounded by water, Taiwan is reliant on undersea cables to connect to the internet. In fact, there are 14 of these submarine cables connecting at 4 points on the main island. These cables can be easily damaged, and in the islands of Matsu, cables have been severed more than 20 times in the past 6 years. Early this year, 2 of those cables were allegedly damaged by Chinese ships.
这个海缆的这个部分的话，万一在接受到类似像战争或者是一些地震之类的意外灾害的时候，它发生中断的时候，对台湾自己本身来说，对外的沟通基本上就失去了。
To resolve this weakness, Taiwan is turning to its space industry. Taiwan is looking to invest more than $10 billion in its space sector by 2025. Specifically on its satellite capabilities. The country recently saw successes in developing its first ever weather satellite, the Trident. Now, while its main function is to predict typhoon patterns, Taiwan is looking to take that a step further and develop satellites that will keep the country connected in the event of a crisis. Another motivating factor has been Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Even though Russia targeted key communication infrastructure in the initial stages of its invasion, Ukraine was able to maintain contact with the outside world through satellite internet. These kinds of cheap and accessible satellites are known as low Earth orbit satellites, or LEOs. They're much easier to put into orbit compared with other far orbit satellites, which means Taiwan could have hundreds of them in space, creating a network that still functions even if 1 or 2 are knocked out. This would be crucial for Taiwan in the case of an attack. These satellites could be used to coordinate a defense plan and monitor military activity.
And it's important because, as we've learned from Ukraine in times of crisis, that kind of redundancy is important not just for the connectivity, but also for military planning and the conduct of military operations.
Taiwan's digital minister, Audrey Tang, has already pledged to build more than 700 satellite terminals to help the country stay connected in the event of an attack. These would provide backup internet access, not only helping the military identify any threats, but also keeping the country connected to the outside world.
One of the big lessons from Ukraine was the importance of the commercial space industry in providing that information that was critical for Ukraine to call out Russian activity nice and early. Taiwan is on a very interesting growth path here in a new industry of space. Already got a significant number of satellites in low Earth orbit and big ambitions to build more and more capabilities.
With Taiwan's space sector expected to lift off in the next few years, the country is hoping to put the lessons learned from Ukraine into action, not only reinforcing its connectivity, but also remaining digitally resilient and prepared for any crisis. Joseph Wu and Jaime Ocon in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
All 4 of Taiwan's presidential candidates have been canvassing for votes in temples as speculation grows over whether 2 of them will run on a joint ticket. Three of the candidates appeared together at a pilgrimage event in the capital, Taipei. Hou You-yi of the main opposition Kuomintang is in talks with Ko Wen-je of the Taiwan People's Party over whether they should run together. But both sides disagree on how they should choose whose name will lead the ballot. Kerr has also suggested he could link up with independent Foxconn founder Terry Gou, who's last in the polls. The ruling party's Lai Ching-te is in the lead. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese travels to China on Saturday to meet President Xi Jinping, the first trip of its kind in 7 years. It's part of a push by Australia to strengthen trade with its biggest economic partner, while building up military ties with the US. For more on the visit, our reporter Stash Butler spoke to Griffith Business School's Caitlin Byrne.
How have we got to this point? I mean, how bad did ties get under the previous Prime Minister, Scott Morrison? And what's happened, to make this kind of a visit possible?
Of course, over the last decade, we had seen a significant downturn in the relationship. It began with Australia banning Huawei from participating in the 5G rollout. And then, of course, Australia's suggestion that there be further inquiries into the origins of COVID-19 and China's role in that. And from there, the relationship really deteriorated. China imposed a number of sanctions on Australian goods. So over the last 7 years, we've moved from something that was quite strong and deep to almost a diplomatic freeze. So I think we're seeing incremental moves to the stabilisation of the relationship and hopefully from here towards a more normalised relationship.
At the same time as Australia is kind of, as you say, stabilising this relationship with China, it's also pursuing, closer security partnership with the US. Albanese has just been in the US visiting President Biden with their landmark AUKUS submarine deal. How is Australia managing or not managing to balance these two relationships, given the competition between the US and China?
That word that you just used around balance is really the key word in this landscape right now. What we've seen of recent months, I think, has been a language related to strategic equilibrium, this idea that for Australia, a middle power that does have to work with a number of countries in the region, as well as with its ally, the United States, and its number one trading partner, China. Now, it's a difficult game to play, but that's what diplomacy is all about.
What do you see happening next in the Australia-China relationship?
That this is a relationship that has to find a new footing. Times have changed. The context has changed. The region is changing. We have seen China, for example, over the last couple of months, remove some of the tariffs that had been in place in the preceding 5 years. That's a great sign. We also saw the release of detained Australian Cheng Lei just a couple of weeks ago. So these are all positive signs of a relationship that is rebuilding, is repairing, and finding a new and more normal footing in the diplomatic landscape.
That was Caitlin Byrne, Pro-Vice Chancellor of Griffith Business School, speaking to Stash Butler. Tech billionaire Elon Musk has called AI the most disruptive force in history, predicting a future where work will be a choice rather than a necessity. Here's what he said.
There will come a point where no job is needed. You can have a job if you want to have a job for sort of personal satisfaction, but the AI will be able to do everything.
Musk was speaking with British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak on the sidelines of an inaugural AI summit in the UK. Over 20 countries, including the US and China, have agreed to cooperate on AI safety. Musk also told Sunak he backs China's inclusion in the pact, which drew some skepticism given Beijing's tense relationship with Washington and several European countries, especially over technology. Sam Bankman-Fried, the founder of now bankrupt cryptocurrency exchange FTX, has been found guilty on 7 counts of fraud and money laundering in New York.
Sam Bankman-Fried perpetrated one of the biggest financial frauds in American history, a multi-billion-dollar scheme designed to make him the king of crypto.
The one-time crypto king faces decades in prison for allegedly stealing some $10 billion from his customers. FTX went bankrupt last November. Bankman-Fried pleaded not guilty to all counts, but he admitted he had made mistakes. The 31-year-old will be sentenced in March next year. The Gay Games is kicking off in Guadalajara and Hong Kong this weekend, but Team Taiwan will only send a team of athletes to Mexico. Reese Ayres has more.
Representing their country and the LGBTQ+ community, Nikki Liao and Kiki Lee are the last of Taiwan's 15 athletes to leave for Guadalajara, Mexico, where they'll compete in tennis and badminton events at the 2023 Gay Games.
前两面应该可以吧？Golden， 我觉得有机会，我觉得我啦，两面金银应该可以拿其中一个。
More than just a chance at glory, these athletes see the Games as an important event for the LGBTQ+ community.
因为其实同志圈里也是很多优秀的人，
优秀的选手，
对，就是以人类来讲都是平等，都可以举办，都可以参加，然后都可以好好的发挥自己的能力。
Held every 4 years since 1982, the Gay Games is an international sporting event celebrating LGBTQ+ athletes. The 2022 event was postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and now the Games will be simultaneously hosted in Mexico and Hong Kong, marking the first time the event will take place in Asia.
And I think being the first Games in Asia that has that particular meaning, not just for Hong Kong, but also the wider Asian community, because I think we all know in Asia, perhaps as compared to the rest of the world, LGBTQ inclusion or acceptance is still relatively lower.
But the event isn't without controversies for Taiwan. At the Paris competition in 2018, the Federation of Gay Games made a last-minute decision to change Team Taiwan's name to Taipei after being pressured by China, which sees Taiwan as part of its territory and exerts its influence on the international community to keep the island nation isolated. This year, Taiwanese athletes will participate in the Games in Guadalajara, but none will go to Hong Kong.
这次是有所顾虑，这次不去香港 Gay Game 的主要原因是，无法保证台湾选手的安全，以至于我们协会放弃主台湾队去参加 Hong Kong Gay Game， 而选择安全的Guadalajara Gay Game。
The Taiwan Gay Sports Association and LGBTQ+ activists say they're concerned that athletes in Hong Kong could be arrested simply for displaying a national or rainbow flag. Though Regina Ip, a member of the Legislative Council of Hong Kong, has dismissed concerns about safety issues for LGBTQ+ athletes, saying such security concerns are totally unwarranted and that we will be happy to see participants display the rainbow flag during the events, so long as it's done in a respectful manner. Team Taiwan may be missing out on some of the events taking place in Hong Kong, such as table tennis, but the athletes on their way to Mexico fly out with high hopes that the next time they touch down in Taiwan, they'll do so with a sports bag full of medals. Scott Huang and Reese Ayres for TaiwanPlus.
More than 1,000 vendors are meeting at the Taipei International Travel Fair, hoping to attract visitors ahead of the new year. Reporter Tiffany Wong went along.
Welcome to Taiwan! Taiwan just welcomed its 5 millionth international visitor of the year. It's the first full year since the COVID-19 pandemic that Taiwan has lifted quarantine restrictions on incoming travelers. And here in Taipei, vendors at the International Travel Fair are hoping to attract more visitors with special promotions at destinations in Taiwan and abroad. This is the most popular tourism event in Taiwan and attracts over 100,000 visitors across 4 days. Taiwan's tourism suffered during the COVID-19 pandemic, but it's clear from the crowds here that the travel bug is still strong. And with just 2 months to go, Taiwan is still hoping to welcome its 6 millionth international visitor before the end of this year. Alex Chen, P.G. Zhuang, and Tiffany Wong in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Finally, ahead of winter, we'll leave you with some images of autumn leaves. I'm Louise Watt. Take care. We'll see you next time.